You ever feel like you've got someone totally wrapped around your finger? That's how it was with me and Ethan at the office in Crestwood. I'm Sophia, 32, and I'd fallen into this easy, comfortable rhythm with him that made work something I actually looked forward to. Ethan was this funny, quick-witted guy who started in our marketing department 6 months before me, and we just clicked from the start. Not in a romantic, drama-filled way. We were way too smart for that office gossip nonsense, but there was this spark between us that made the long days in Crestwood's gray corporate park feel alive. We'd text after hours, sometimes about work stuff like client deadlines or pitch ideas, but other times it was just random things. A meme about our boss's latest obsession with game-changing strategies, or a quick debate about whether the new sci-fi show we were both watching was any good. Ethan would swing by my desk every morning with a latte, oat milk, no sugar, just how I liked it, cracking jokes that had me laughing so loud I'd get side-eye from the rest of the team. The other folks in the office would give us these looks when we got going, but I didn't care. They were probably just jealous they didn't have someone to make their boring 9-to-5 a little brighter. I got used to being the one Ethan picked for lunch breaks or to vent about clients who kept changing their minds. It made me feel special, like I stood out in that sea of cubicles. I wasn't trying to stir up trouble or steal anyone's guy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the attention. Who doesn't want to feel noticed? Ethan had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in our dull office on the third floor of Crestwood's business complex. I started looking forward to Mondays, crazy, right? Because I knew he'd be there with some story about his weekend, like a disastrous attempt at fixing his car or a funny moment from a bar trivia night, and he'd ask about mine, really listening when I talked about hiking the trails in Willowbrook or my roommate's latest disaster, like leaving pizza boxes on the couch. It was light, playful stuff that made a tough job feel almost fun. I quietly loved how the other women in the office noticed us. There was this one coworker, Tara, in our department, who'd make these snippy comments about how close Ethan and I were getting, acting like she was worried about workplace vibes. Yeah, right. She was just annoyed that no one stopped by her desk to trade jokes. I'd catch her staring when Ethan leaned over my desk to check a spreadsheet, standing close enough that I could smell his woodsy cologne, a mix of cedar and something sharp that always caught my attention. Those moments felt alive, like we had our own little world no one else could step into. Texting started simple, work stuff mostly. He'd send me a meme mocking our boss's love for thinking outside the box, or he'd complain about a client who sent 10 emails in one day. But it grew into more personal stuff. What shows we were hooked on, random thoughts about life like whether we'd ever ditch Crestwood for a bigger city with better jobs. Nothing too serious, but definitely more than just co-workers. I'd find myself checking my phone all the time, getting a little thrill when his name popped up with a new message, like a quick, "You see Grayson's email? What is he even talking about?" followed by a laughing emoji. Sometimes we'd text late into the night, the conversation so easy it felt like we were grabbing coffee together instead of typing from our apartments across town. I told myself it was just a good friendship, but deep down I knew it was something more. There was a closeness that made me feel special, like I was the one he wanted to share his real thoughts with. Ethan had this way of making me feel like the smartest person in the room. In meetings, if I threw out an idea like a new tagline for a client's campaign, he'd jump in, adding to it in a way that made it sound even better, giving me a quick smile like we were on the same wavelength. He'd slip in references to our late-night chats, little jokes that showed he was actually paying attention. Most guys at work barely listened when I spoke, their eyes glazing over, but Ethan seemed to catch every word, his hazel eyes lighting up when I talked. It made me feel sharp and interesting in a way I hadn't felt in years, like I was more than just another cog in Crestwood's corporate machine. I started putting more effort into how I looked at work, picking out nice blouses or that one navy skirt I knew he'd notice, spritzing on the floral perfume he'd mentioned liking during a lunch break when we grabbed sandwiches at the deli across from the office. It felt like we were in this perfect little balance. I got the connection I wanted without any of the messy complications of a real relationship. Ethan got someone who got his work stress, laughed at his dry humor, and made his days less boring. It was like we'd figured out how to have the best parts of a relationship without the drama. I thought we could keep it going forever, nobody getting hurt. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. Our routine became the best part of my week. Every Monday and Wednesday, Ethan would show up with 2 coffees, mine just right, and we'd spend the first 10 or 15 minutes catching up, sometimes longer if our boss, Grayson, was stuck in a meeting across town. He'd talk about some crime podcast he was obsessed with or a movie he'd stayed up too late watching on his beat-up couch. I'd share stories about my weekend hikes in Willowbrook, where the trails wound through quiet woods, or complain about my roommate leaving dishes in the sink again. Felt so easy, like we'd known each other for years, the hum of the office's fluorescent lights and the clack of keyboards fading away as we talked in our own little bubble. Ethan always came to me first when something big happened. If we landed a new client, he'd text me before anyone else, his message buzzing through with a quick "we did it" and some goofy emoji that made me laugh. When Grayson said something ridiculous in a meeting, like telling us to leverage our synergies for a project that was already falling apart, we'd catch each other's eye across the conference table in Willowbrook's stuffy meeting room, sharing a silent laugh that said we were the only ones who got it. He made me feel like his go-to person, the one he trusted most in that place. That feeling was hard to shake, like a warm buzz that carried me through the day. I'd never had someone focus on me like Ethan did, like I was a key part of his world at work. The other women definitely saw it. Jenna from the front desk was the worst, always finding excuses to wander by Ethan's desk when we were talking, pretending she needed a stapler or a random file from the cabinet nearby. Tara kept up her fake concern about our friendship like she was the office rule keeper, saying things like, "You two are awfully close, aren't you?" with a tight smile. They didn't understand. This wasn't some silly office crush or anything like that. It was deeper, a real friendship with someone who got my sense of humor and made me feel like I mattered beyond my job title. Then Clara showed up and everything fell apart. She was 45, which surprised me because she carried herself like someone older, with this heavy, confident air like she'd seen it all and was above the rest of us. Her resume was stacked with big-name companies, and our boss practically worshipped her from the moment she walked in. Right away, I could tell she was one of those people who thinks they're better just because they've been around longer. She had this way of talking, calm, measured, like she knew something we didn't, that got under my skin. And Ethan? He was hooked from day one. I watched him introduce himself to her in the break room, his usual easy grin replaced with something sharper, more eager. He stood taller, used this formal tone instead of the relaxed, jokey way he talked to me. His whole vibe changed around her, stiffer, like he was trying to impress someone important. This wasn't the Ethan I knew, the one who'd spend 20 minutes joking about whether Grayson was having a midlife crisis or just losing his mind over a bad client review. I tried to brush it off at first, new coworker, everyone's extra polite at the start, but it didn't stop. Day after day, he'd find reasons to stop by her desk, offering to explain software she probably knew better than him, like the CRM system we all used. In meetings, when I tried to catch his eye like we always did, he was glued to whatever boring thing Clara was saying, nodding like she was dropping life-changing ideas. I started noticing how he'd light up when she spoke, like her words were the most interesting thing in the world. It was subtle at first, but it was there and it stung. Our easy, natural connection was getting drowned out by his need to get her attention. The worst part? Clara acted like she barely noticed, just doing her work with this calm, unbothered air that somehow made him try harder. In meetings, she'd throw out these basic ideas, stuff anyone could have come up with, like tweaking a report format, and Ethan would nod like she'd invented the wheel. She had this annoying habit of asking obvious questions about our systems, like she was still figuring out the basics even though her resume screamed experience. But Ethan found it charming, not frustrating, like her confusion was cute or something ridiculous like that. The first real blow came during our weekly team meeting in the Willowbrook office's cramped conference room, with its stale coffee smell and flickering projector. Ethan and I always sat together, an unspoken habit we'd had for months. But that day, he plopped down next to Clara, leaving me to find a seat across the table. When I tried to jump into their small talk before the meeting, something about a new client brief, I got these polite but cold replies like I was crashing their private conversation. Felt like being left out in high school, except worse because I thought Ethan and I were past that kind of nonsense. I spent the whole meeting watching them, noticing how he got so animated around her, leaning in when she spoke like her words were gold. When she suggested something, he'd jump in, adding details to make her basic ideas sound brilliant, his voice full of enthusiasm I used to hear when we talked. When I spoke up, sharing an update on my project, he barely looked at me, his eyes flicking to his notebook or his phone. It was like I'd become invisible, like our months of friendship, our jokes, our texts, our shared moments meant nothing. After the meeting, I tried to pull him aside for our usual chat, where we'd make fun of Grayson's latest buzzwords or laugh about the meeting's pointless agenda items. But he brushed me off, mumbling something about a tight deadline. This was the guy who'd spent half an hour joking about Grayson's bad PowerPoint slides, and now he was too busy. I knew exactly where his attention was going, and it wasn't work. It was Clara. Within 2 weeks, Ethan was like a stranger. Our morning coffee runs stopped without a word. No more oat milk lattes, no more easy chats by my desk. The late-night texts? Completely gone. I'd say, "Hey, Ethan," passing his desk, and he'd give me this stiff nod like we'd barely met at some company event in Ridgefield. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. We'd been so close, sharing stories, laughing over dumb office moments, and now I was nobody to him. I started paying attention to where his focus was, and it was all on Clara. He'd hang around her desk, asking if she needed help with anything, offering to walk her through reports she clearly already understood. He'd save her a seat in meetings, make sure she had the good pens for brainstorming sessions, even rush to carry anything heavier than a folder like she couldn't handle it herself. When she spoke, he'd act like she was a genius, turning her simple comments into big ideas with a grin I used to see aimed at me. When I tried to join their conversations, I got those same polite but distant responses like I was an outsider. Felt like he was cutting me out on purpose, and it stung like a personal attack. I kept wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I said something off? Been too friendly? Not friendly enough? I went over every moment we'd shared, replaying our texts and conversations, trying to figure out if I'd crossed some line I didn't see. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about me at all. This was about Ethan being totally caught up in Clara like she was some mystery he had to figure out. I mean, what 45-year-old doesn't have baggage? Messy divorces, kids with problems, trust issues, the whole middle-aged package. Why was he so eager to jump into that? Didn't make sense. We had this great thing going, something that made work fun, and he was throwing it away for what? Someone who probably had more red flags than a warning sign factory. Texting stopping hurt the most. I'd gotten so used to that constant connection, that feeling of being important to someone all day. My phone felt empty now, and I'd catch myself checking it out of habit, hoping his name would pop up with a random meme or a quick, "You won't believe what Grayson just said." Sometimes I'd start typing a message, something funny from a client call or a complaint about a deadline, before remembering we didn't do that anymore. The silence felt mean, like he was shutting me out for no reason I could name. I noticed how Ethan would position himself in meetings to see Clara better, taking breaks when she did, like he was timing his day around her. It was like watching him turn into someone else, and not in a good way. The confident, funny guy I knew was now this eager kid, desperate for any bit of her attention. It was kind of sad to watch, honestly. Did he not see how obvious he was being, trailing her around like a lost puppy? If Ethan wanted to play games, I could play too. I started being extra friendly with other guys in the office. Lucas from the sales team, Nate from management, even Grayson when it made sense, like when we were brainstorming for a big pitch. Nothing unprofessional, just the same kind of attention I'd given Ethan, like joking about a client's weird email or sharing a quick laugh over lunch. Suddenly, Ethan noticed me again, but not in a good way. His jaw would tighten when he saw me laughing with Lucas in the break room, where the coffee machine always smelled faintly burnt. In meetings, if I was talking to one of the guys, he'd cut in with some random work question or find a way to pull them away like he needed their input on something urgent. It was so fake it was almost funny, like, "You don't want me, but no one else can have me either." The double standard drove me nuts. He could follow Clara around like a teenager with a crush, but the second I was friendly with someone else, he got all protective. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just being myself with coworkers, chatting about weekend plans or work stress. But somehow that was a problem for him while his obsession with Clara wasn't. I started making little comments, nothing mean, just pointing out what everyone could see. "Wow, Clara, that's a great idea," I'd say in a tone that showed it was nothing special, like when she suggested reformatting a spreadsheet we'd been using for years. Or, "Ethan, you're so helpful today," when he jumped to fix something for her like a jammed printer she could have handled herself. I wasn't being rude, just calling out the obvious, the way he was bending over backward for her while ignoring me. But somehow I became the problem. People started giving me looks, like I was the one acting weird when I was just reacting to Ethan's behavior. It's not my fault he couldn't handle a little competition or that he ditched our friendship for some new obsession. Honestly, the other guys were more fun anyway. They liked my jokes and didn't act like I was annoying just for being there. Lucas, especially, had this sharp humor that reminded me of how Ethan used to be before he got caught up with Clara. We'd swap stories about dumb client requests or make fun of Grayson's habit of using corporate jargon like circle back in every sentence. It felt good to have someone to laugh with again, even if it wasn't the same. Lucas and I would share quick looks during boring meetings, making quiet jokes about Grayson's latest PowerPoint disaster that no one else caught. I could tell it bugged Ethan when Lucas and I cracked up over something dumb like Grayson's suggestion to pivot to a new paradigm for a failing campaign. Or when Lucas stopped by my desk to talk about a new hiking spot in Willowbrook he'd found, his easy grin reminding me of the old Ethan. I thought maybe a little jealousy would snap Ethan out of it, make him realize what he'd thrown away. But instead of trying to fix things, he leaned even harder into Clara. It was like he wanted to prove I didn't matter at all. He'd walk past my desk with her, talking loudly about plans they were making, like a team happy hour at a bar in Ridgefield, or some inside joke they'd started sharing. It was so obvious and petty, I almost felt bad for him, like he was trying too hard to show he'd moved on. The real sting came when I overheard Ethan talking to Clara about a new cafe in Willowbrook, asking if she'd want to try it with him. This was right by my desk, his voice loud enough for me to hear every word, the faint hum of the office printer in the background. It hurt because I'd told him about that cafe weeks ago when we were planning lunch spots during one of our coffee chats. I'd said we should check it out together, maybe try their famous avocado toast. Now he was asking her and making sure I knew it. It was casual enough to seem innocent, just co-workers grabbing lunch, but I wasn't stupid. I knew he was doing it to get to me. Everything came to a head at our quarterly review meeting in the Willowbrook office's conference room, with its scratched table and flickering overhead lights. Clara was presenting some process idea that was honestly pretty basic, something about streamlining client reports that we'd all heard before. But Ethan was nodding like she'd just invented something groundbreaking, scribbling notes like her words were pure gold. When it was my turn to share my project updates, a campaign I'd been working on for weeks, he was on his phone, not even pretending to listen, his thumb scrolling through emails or whatever. That's when I lost it. I made a sharp comment about how some people seemed way more interested in certain presentations than others. The room went dead quiet, the air heavy with awkwardness. Clara gave me this calm, almost smug look that made my blood boil, her perfectly manicured hands folded on the table. Ethan's face turned red, and Grayson cleared his throat like I'd just said something awful by pointing out what everyone was thinking. After the meeting, Grayson pulled me aside in his office, the one with the fake plant in the corner and a view of the parking lot. He said my attitude was causing problems for the team, his voice stern but tired, like he didn't want to deal with this. Apparently, people had complained about my negative behavior, which was ridiculous. All I'd done was react to being treated like I didn't exist by someone I thought was my friend. But somehow I was the bad guy. Ethan didn't say a word to defend me, didn't even hint that his actions started this whole mess. He just let me take the blame while he kept chasing Clara, following her to the break room or offering to grab her a coffee. And her? She acted like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't walked in and taken the one good thing I had at work. I realized they'd probably been talking about me behind my back for weeks, making me out to be some jealous, unstable person who couldn't handle not being the center of attention. Talk with Grayson was humiliating. He listed issues I'd supposedly caused, snarky comments in meetings, acting possessive over projects, making new employees feel unwelcome. Half of it was news to me or completely blown out of proportion. Like when I'd corrected Clara's mistake about how we logged client data in the system, apparently that was rude and unhelpful. Or when I pointed out Ethan's idea for a new ad campaign was something I'd pitched months earlier, that was disruptive and attention-seeking. It was clear Ethan and Clara had been spinning every little thing I did, collecting moments to make me look like the problem employee. I left Grayson's office feeling like I'd been punched, the weight of it all settling in my chest as I walked back to my desk, the office's usual buzz sounding distant and hollow. 3 months later, I heard Ethan and Clara were dating. Not from Ethan, of course, I found out from Mia in HR, who mentioned seeing them at a cozy cafe in Ridgefield, holding hands and looking like a couple straight out of a rom-com they'd been sneaking around for weeks, probably laughing about how clueless everyone was. The real kicker came when Grayson called me into his office again, this time to tell me my contract wouldn't be renewed. Performance issues and team fit problems were the official reasons, but I knew the truth. Ethan and Clara had painted me as the problem, the bitter woman who couldn't handle normal workplace stuff, while they got to be the perfect professional couple who stayed above it all. As I packed up my desk, shoving pens and notebooks into a cardboard box, Ethan was suddenly very busy at his computer, his eyes glued to the screen like it was the most important thing in the world. He didn't even look at me, not once. Clara gave me this fake, sad smile as I walked past with my box, her voice soft as she said, "Good luck, Sophia," like she actually cared. It was disgusting, like watching a bad actor in a cheap play. I wanted to say something, to call them out, but I just kept walking, the weight of the box heavy in my arms and the office's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. 6 months later, I'm still out of work. Word travels fast in Crestwood's small industry, and difficult employees don't get callbacks, no matter how good their work was. Then I saw their engagement announcement on LinkedIn, popping up on my feed like a slap. Ethan, smiling wider than I'd ever seen him, his arm around Clara in some scenic park. Clara, glowing with that smug look of someone who got exactly what she wanted. The comments were full of people calling them a perfect couple, gushing about how sweet their story was. Meanwhile, I'm the warning story, the woman who couldn't handle a coworker moving on to something better. But here's the truth no one wants to admit: I wasn't wrong. Ethan was too spineless to be honest about his feelings or what he was doing. Clara knew exactly what she was up to, seeing what Ethan and I had and taking it for herself, pushing me out step by step to get it. And I'm supposed to just smile and act like I don't see what happened? No way. They deserve each other. What gets me is how easily everyone bought their story. Suddenly, I was the unstable one, the woman who couldn't handle work relationships. But no one asked why Ethan's behavior changed the second Clara showed up. No one noticed how my issues started right when she arrived. No one said maybe I was just reacting to being pushed out and replaced by someone new. I still check their social media sometimes, I'll admit it. They look so happy in their photos, all couple Y with matching hiking gear and weekend trips to Ridgefield's trails, posing against sunsets or laughing by a campfire. Ethan posts these cheesy captions about finding love when you least expect it and being thankful for new starts. Makes me sick, like our months of friendship meant nothing at all. Like I was just a stand-in until something better came along, a temporary friend to fill the space until Clara walked in. But here's what they'll never know. I remember everything about what we had. Every late-night chat when we'd talk about nothing and everything, every moment we laughed so hard we couldn't breathe, every time Ethan opened up about something real, his worries about not moving up in his career, his messy family history with his overbearing dad, his fear of never being enough. What we had was real, no matter how much he acts like it wasn't. Clara can have him now, but she's got the careful version, the Ethan who's learned to hold back after everything that happened. I had the real him, even if it was just for a while and didn't mean as much to him as it did to me. Sometimes I wonder if they talk about me. Do they laugh about how jealous I was, how bitter I seemed? Or do they pretend I never existed, like our friendship was just some awkward phase Ethan had to get through before finding his real love? Either way, it doesn't matter now. They won, I lost, and life keeps moving whether I'm okay with it or not. But they can't change the fact that, for a while, I was the one who mattered most to him in that office. That's something Clara will never have, no matter how many rings he buys her or how many happy couple photos they post online. I mattered to him once, and no amount of their perfect little life can erase that.